So I just finished watching the Armageddon crossover for The Flash, and I thought it was pretty good. I honestly think it's much better than a lot of the previous seasons of The Flash. But I wanted to do an essay today where I really just talk about why The Flash went from being pretty good back in its first two seasons to just one of the worst shows on television right now. Honestly, it's borderline unwatchable, especially season 7. I was skipping entire episodes during that season. And I'm also going to be going over the bigger problem that this show has, along with a lot of the other Arrowverse shows, and sort of breaking down why they really don't work anymore. Number 1, the seasons are too long. I know this is a very common criticism, but I don't think I have the same reasoning that a lot of other people do for why this is a problem. Listen, I don't think that having a 20 episode season is necessarily bad, even if a show isn't a procedural. But The Flash decides to take storylines that really could be wrapped up in like 8 episodes or so and stretch it out across 22 episodes, and then basically just fill everything else in with side plots that end up going nowhere. They could fix this by just upping the scope, the scale, and the stakes of the season-long storyline, and basically just having every single episode focused on it, okay? I'm not saying don't have side plots. Side plots are necessary, right? You can't just have one plot line focused on the whole time, and a lot of great shows do have a lot of side plots, but the problem with this show is that it's all side plots. They introduce the season-long storyline in the premiere, and then they don't address it until the finale, and the entire middle of the season is just filler, and it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, right? It's just exploring some new character that they introduced, and some villain of the week who ends up dying 2 episodes later and then has no impact on the story. What they should be doing is they have a season-long storyline, but it's a huge story, right? It's not just like, oh, we need to defeat this one villain. It has to be more multifaceted so that you can take an entire 22 episode structure and fill that in with the storyline. But instead, the writers for The Flash usually just introduce some random villain from the comics, okay? Then they give him some interesting motivation, right? Like his daughter died. He has an interesting weapon or power, and then it takes 22 episodes for the fastest man alive, who can literally run faster than the speed of light, to defeat some guy with a dagger. It sort of takes you out of the experience, okay? I understand that they are bound by this 22 episode structure, right? They're on network television. Some people like to say, oh, it's the best that they could do. They have this big long season and they're having to stretch out this shorter storyline into 22 episodes because the network told them to. But I don't think that's a great excuse, because all you have to do is up the scale of the story. I know they're bound by the CW's low budget, okay? Especially in these later seasons, you can tell that the show has definitely gone through some budget cuts. But upping the scale doesn't necessarily mean you need big space battles or CGI fights in the city. I know they can't do that, okay? You need to build the concepts out bigger, okay? I honestly don't care if you have horrible CGI and horrible fight scenes. If your story's still interesting, I can look past that, okay? I understand that this is network television, but you can't have bad writing and then say, oh, they weren't giving us a big enough budget. It's a lame excuse, and I think the new Armageddon crossover proves my point right. The new Armageddon crossover ups the stakes of The Flash a lot. Spoiler warning, by the way, in case you haven't seen it. But anyways, the villain, a Justice League level villain, Despero, comes back from the future and says, the Flash causes Armageddon in the future, so I'm gonna kill you to save the world. And then the entire crossover is Barry basically just going to other heroes and saying, hey, can you help me with this? Like, this is a very big concept, but yet it doesn't really take that much CGI or things that require a big budget to be told effectively, as is seen clearly in this crossover. There are side plots in this season, like Joe dying and Allegra and Simon's relationship, right? But that's all tied into the main plot, right? It actually services the story in an effective way. But in the previous seasons, you have the main plot, and then all the side plots have nothing to do with the main plot, and we focus on the side plots more than the main plot, leaving the main plot to feel more like a side quest, even though it's the main plot line, right? And that leads to the season finale feeling very unsatisfactory because we haven't spent any time on the actual main plot of the season, right? We've spent all this time on the side plots, and then they're like, oh right, we have to reintroduce the main plot, and then they wrap it up, and it feels very unsatisfying. Number 2, there are way too many people on Team Flash. Why are there so many people on Team Flash? It's honestly baffling. First of all, there are way too many people with superpowers on this show. It should really just be Barry and then a few other people. I think they handled Wally having superpowers really nicely, right? He gets his superpowers, he learns how to use them, and then boom, they kick him off to Legends of Tomorrow, right? So we can focus on Barry, because this is the Flash, not Team Flash. The show isn't called Team Flash, it's about Barry, right? It's about the Flash. We're supposed to focus on his character, but every season they just keep on introducing more and more side characters and shining the spotlight further and further away from Barry, to the point where he feels like a side character in his own show. Okay, my complaint about the first season was, he's not the Flash enough, right? It's just him going around his life complaining about his problems, but he's not actually being the Flash enough. Okay, I want more Flash. But nowadays we don't even get to see any Barry, right? We don't get to see Barry or Flash. We get to see all these random people on his team who we have no connection with because the writers are horrible and don't do any good character development. But also, I wouldn't even care about them if they were well developed. I'm here for Barry, okay? I'm here to see him fighting the Reverse Flash and Zoom and Savitar and punching him in the face, right? And then maybe, sure, a little taste of his personal life, a little taste of his friend's personal life, but mostly it's him fighting a villain and trying to figure out how to overcome him. But this show, especially in season 7 and even 6 a little bit, has deviated so far away from that it is almost unwatchable, okay? It is no longer giving me anything resembling what I signed up for. Number 3, the villains are terrible. After Reverse Flash, and I guess kind of Zoom, the villains were horrible. This show is structured like a soap opera, okay? And I don't mean that in a bad way, okay? Some people like to use that as a critique, but seasons 1 and 2 of this show are structured like a soap opera. You have very dramatic love triangles and emotional twists for all your characters, and then you have people who you don't think you know who they are, but then they are, and they come out and they stab you in the back. And season 1 of The Flash is no exception, right? It's structured like a soap opera, and that's one of the reasons it's so good. It's got betrayals, romance, drama, love triangles, all that sort of stuff. And you can see a lot of the betrayals coming from a mile away, but still, it's interesting. And that was a big part of the charm from the beginning, right? That's how they kept you strung along all these episodes. That's why they became so bingeable. I watched the first season of The Flash in like a month or so. You know, it was very easy to go on to the next episode because of this soap opera format. And I think they really used that to their advantage. Now you're probably wondering, what does the structure of the show have anything to do with the villains? Well, I think it has a lot to do with the villains, okay? The structure of this show does not really allow for cheesy, over-the-top Star Wars villains whose only goal is to be evil. You can get away with that in some other universes, but this show does not allow for that. Okay, your villains have to have interesting, complex motives that are compelling to the audience, and you can empathize on them at some level, right? That's why the Reverse Flash was such a good villain. I mean, they spend so much time fleshing out his character, and then when he stabs Barry in the back and it turns out Barry was being played this whole time, it's very effective. This is where the soap opera structure meets how the villains need to be done. Okay, you can't have villains like the Thinker who just want to make the world stupid, basically, right? Like, ha ha ha, the world will be dumb because I'm gonna make it so. You know, you can't do that. You can't have a Darth Vader villain who just wants evil. You know, that was sort of the thing with Godspeed and Bloodwork, you know, and Cicada. They're all just evil. They don't have any interesting layers to their character, right? They're all just flat characters. And some people like to say, well, that can work in superhero shows, you know? And I'm a big proponent of that. I don't think all villains have to have some interesting, complex motivation that makes them compelling to the audience. I don't think that's necessary all the time. But the Flash show is not the kind of place where you can have a cheesy one-note villain. And that's very clear because pretty much all the villains after Reverse Flash, including Zoom, were just not very good. Overall, ever since season 2, I really don't think the show has been good at all. I don't think 3, 4, 5, 6, and especially 7 were good at all. It just was not good television, and I honestly don't understand why they're still running the show. But I think there could be some light at the end of this very dark tunnel, okay? I think the Armageddon crossover was interesting, and maybe they'll take my idea up of upping the scale and upping the scope of these stories so that they can expand on them more and have them fill up more episodes so they won't have to bog down the season with so many useless side plots. And it seemed as though that's the direction they were trying to go in with the Armageddon storyline. You know, it was a very good crossover. It was probably one of my favorites on the CW. I really enjoyed it. But I hope it's not just some one-off thing, you know, where like they do a few good episodes and then the rest of season 8 sucks. I hope this overall storyline for season 8 is interesting. I hope it's big. I hope it's grand. I hope the villain is a credible threat so that they can explore the main plot line in almost every single one of the episodes so that when the finale comes, it feels earned. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content on the channel, make sure to subscribe and also hit the like button. Do all that stuff. See you next time.